Welcome to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. How do we learn to truly thrive together? How do we stay connected to our authentic selves, each other, and our purpose as a team, especially when challenged? How do we unlock the deeper levels of group intelligence? Enjoy this episode of the Connected Teamwork Podcast and learn practical tools to evolve the connectedness of your team to its next level.
Welcome to Connected Teamwork Podcast, episode 81, where we help leaders and teams connect more deeply to themselves, each other, and their purpose. Carson Hetty is my co-host. He is with me today. How are you doing today, Carson?
Hilka, I'm wonderful. Can't believe this is number 81. I feel so just blessed and honored to keep doing these with you.
And same here, all in the pursuit of finding ways to connect more deeply to each other, which I think in our current stage of human evolution is a skill that most of us are at best consciously unskilled in. At least I count myself in that group, which I think is the majority. Today, we're going to talk about connected teamwork practice number 8, which is about listening deeply, so that we can really hear what the other is saying. So it's listen deeply, and it's part of connected teamwork communication practice, connected communication practice number 8. Now, I want you to think for a moment about listening deeply. Is that something that comes natural to you, or is it something that requires some work? Carson, what's your answer to that?
Yeah, I think I even said when we were in the green room prepping for today's conversation, I'm a work in progress here, but I do feel, by addressing the need for listening more effectively, listening more deeply, specifically in the relationships that matter most to you. That's the first step. I think listening really starts with getting over yourself and the realization that everyone, ourselves included, we want and yearn to be seen and to be and feel connected. And the way that you can earn the connectedness or more connectedness from others is by listening more deeply. So that's what we're going to unpack today.
That innate desire to connect with others. So that's true. And so I think about a client conversation I had with a couple of weeks ago with a client who wasn't doing what I wanted them to do. And she had some pretty prescriptive ideas about what we should be doing. And I had prepared for the call. It was early in the morning for me. And I had put down in my little notebook, listen. But there was another part of me that was all about the 3 disconnectors: obsessing, judging, and controlling. So for me to listen, and if I'm obsessing about something, I'm actually not here. I'm not able to be with you. So in this conversation with her, I was very focused on what I wanted to achieve and how to avoid the mines that I didn't want to step on, and to find a way to get to the result I want, no matter what. That's controlling. And of course, I had all kinds of not so nice thoughts about her for not being in agreement with me. And fortunately, after 25 years of practice, I'm at the place now that many times, not most times even, many times I notice it. I'm in Hilke world. I'm not open for business. I'm not open for listening. Even though somebody's talking to me, I'm not open for listening. And then what I can do is I can stop. I can let that be, have compassion for myself. I'm a human being. I do obsess, I judge, I control. And then I let go and then just allow for listening to happen. And for me, listening is very much an act of non-doing, but very intentional. It's mostly like keeping the windows clean without getting lost in that idea. So what is that for you, Carson? What are your thoughts about how you not listen and how do you listen?
I think sometimes the challenge, Hilka, because I suffer from some of the same challenges. It's really making sure that, we're not leaning into some of the false positives that we can sometimes get from trying to control or trying to, earn our way with a conversation, right? I mean, I began my career as a fast talking, highly competitive salesperson who was very transactional in a call center. And I had a lot of success. But the reality is, to go into enterprise selling and some of the leadership roles that I've been in, as well as being in a marriage, you have to learn how to really listen for the person you're talking to's words. You have to actually be absorbing and reflecting on what they're saying as opposed to reloading and preparing to speak. And that is what I had to get past. And I still struggle from that. I live in a household with a wife and 3 daughters, so I rarely get a word in edgewise. And so you have to make sure that you're listening deeply to what is being said. You acknowledge what the feelings are that are around you, and that you're not just trying to go in and diagnose or solve a problem. You've got to make sure that people feel seen and heard. Because again, to go back to our preamble, everybody wants to be seen and heard. And just because we want to be seen and heard, and sometimes we are our biggest, our own biggest proponent in that plight, if we want to matter to somebody else, we've got to make sure we're seeing and hearing what they're talking about and what they're saying. You become a better leader when you stop needing to be the spotlight and you put the spotlight on those that you want to matter to.
I'm just having this visual, you with wife and 3 daughters at the dinner table. That's Olympic listening practice. Sounds to me like I relate to that. I had a conversation last night with my husband. I'm up in the mountains, and he's in northern Arizona, and he's in Phoenix. Can't come with me because he's cast in a play, which is fantastic. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation. And so whenever you talk to somebody, at least when I talk to somebody, when I'm going to call them, I have a certain expectation. I'm going to the party, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to talk to my client, I'm going to make impact. I'm going to talk to my teammates, we're going to make progress. I'm going to talk to my husband, I'm going to feel great. Well, he was talking to me last night about something that I found challenging. And I was like, thinking, Sunday, it is Sunday. I'm here to relax. I'm going to go on this hike. I'm thinking about things about the neighbor that I have to manage. I'm not open for this. And so I called myself back and I remembered this little phrase that listening does not mean solving, which is why listening can feel so impossible. Because if listening means whatever is being said to me is a problem like that I have to solve, it's very overwhelming. And what you just said, Carson, the first objective and probably the foundational objective of the act of listening is to see each other. I find there's a tool that we use at work called a check-in. I use it in my personal life too, where simply you say a feeling and then whatever is the question that we're discussing, my intention, something I learned, something I want to talk about, whatever it is. And the next person doesn't say, oh, yes, Mary, I disagree or I agree, but says, thank you, and the next person talks. And that is such a liberating listening exercise because nobody feels the obligation to have to respond to what Mary said or what Hilke said or what Carson said or what Peter said. Everybody just is able to speak what they need to say, which also frees them up to speak more freely. Because if I speak to you thinking that inadvertently I'm making a transaction with you that you're going to have to solve for or address for or empathize with or whatever thing I put on you, I'm going to be strategic at best, manipulative at worst in what I'm going to say to you. Because I'm thinking, well, can Carson handle this today? Does he want to hear this? And so with my husband and with my clients and friends and other fellow human beings, I remind myself that listening is not solving. Listening is being with.
One
So
thing we
challenging.
have to make sure that we don't associate with empathizing and listening is two things. One, when somebody says something that is a venting or a frustration, and either squashing that or trying to move past it or trying to minimize that, like, oh, it could be worse. Oh, this happened to me type of thing. And then furthermore, second, the comparison trap. And what I mean by that is my wife says, oh, wow, this situation is really challenging, really frustrating. And I say, oh my gosh, I know this happened to me, blah, 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 because you've immediately flattened their concern. You've tried to almost do this comparison or acting as if your situation is just as bad, worse, and that you've minimized what is very real to them and their perspective. It's more important that we exhibit curiosity in these situations. And frankly, like if you need the pat on the back or the compliment, like they're already telling you about their problem. So they already see you as a trusted person to go to. You don't have to like sell yourself, prove yourself as this trusted advisor by talking about how great your experience is relative to theirs. Like just listen, be curious, and say, tell me more. Tell me more about that. I can see where that's really frustrating. How could I help? How could I support you in this situation? Those types of things are really important. Now, I also can't pretend that just because you might say and do some of the right things, like it doesn't make the problems go away. It might make the situation look a little bit different. And frankly, I would say 9 times out of 10, when I feel seen and heard in those types of situations, I feel better. And it's not because somebody magically solved my problem. It's because I felt seen and I was able to talk about and talk through that situation. I don't need or want anybody to solve my problem for me, nor does my wife. But because we're able to put that problem out there into the ether, walk through it, talk through it, have somebody that we like, know, and trust listen and see us, that makes all the difference in the world. And if we can give that experience to other people, wow, what an investment that is that we can make.
I relate to what you're saying, Carson, as co-regulation.
Yes.
So, a mind is like a dangerous neighborhood. Better not to go there by yourself. So this thing about our emotions and thoughts, at least if they're anything like mine, yours, they can be jumbled. They can have charge in them. All that, right? And so just like in meditation, when we speak, a meditation is a practice of becoming familiar with, a way to think about it. And that way, the way we speak with each other can be a way to be on the same side of the table and look together at what's there. And and interesting, by just looking together, the weightiness of it becomes less. Now, there's so many traps in this, because then you can become a commiserator. Yes, it's terrible, isn't it? Which doesn't help the other person. That's also secretly a little way of solving, of trying to sort of get something from the other person. But often like clean listening, like, thank you for sharing. And maybe playing it back without becoming sophisticated, with a lot of humility. I sense you might be talking about, I hear you talk about this thing. What do you think? Or how do you feel? And then also knowing when it's time to stop. Do you want to say anything? Is there anything else you'd like to say about this? I really want to make time. Okay. And for me, one of the hardest ones is when they've said something, especially when it's related to me and our relationship, and the other person lets me know that it's not time to solve, but it's something they need to look at. that moment then becomes like, how do you move from there? And what I found is simply asking the question, okay, so I hear you. Um, what would be a good next thing to say about this? Or do we feel complete? Do you feel complete? Okay. All right, that's complete. Now, are you okay if we talk for a moment about what needs to be held from the shop, or if we go to this next agenda item? So making it like, since listening can be so intimate, deeply connected, I think it's important to, well, honor it and saying we're doing something here. Is are we okay to move? So we do move together. We're gonna take a break. After the break, Carson, I want to hear from you about how do you deal with those things that are sort of left hanging, at least maybe for your perception, like it is not conclusion. See you after the break.
You are listening to the Connected Teamwork podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Do you want to learn more about building the next level of connectedness in your team? Please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back to the Connected Teamwork podcast, where we discuss connected communication practice number 8, listen deeply. Carson, how do you deal with those things that are just in the air, not resolved?
That's a good one, because not everything gets resolved in the moment. And, when I think about working with teams and working with people, everyone has an agenda. I think it's important to be proactive in setting the tone and the stage when you do approach a conversation, even though you know that not everything can or may be resolved during those types of situations, because my natural instinct is to chase closure, right? So sometimes you have to sit in that discomfort, but you don't have to sit in it alone. Just because you want the answer or the decision or the finality, that doesn't mean that it's going to happen. So first off, there's kind of getting over myself in the equation, right? Because when something's left hanging, my mind can fill the empty space with assumptions or jumping to conclusions. And that is the last thing you want to do in these situations. You can't assume somebody else's intent. I'm actually reading a book right now that was recommended to me recently called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, How to Lose Your Mind and Create a New One by Joe Dispenza. It was recommended by a mentor in a conversation I had last week, and I started reading it. And Hilke, what it's all about is really we construct our own reality based on our experiences, based on our situation and our view of the world. And while sometimes routines and knowledge can be very comforting, we also basically set our own playing field in motion by doing a lot of the same things and approaching situations the same way. So if we want different results in these situations, like finding closure in conversations or not assuming the worst in somebody that you may not always work well together with, you've got to approach things differently. You've got to ask different questions. You've got to set the tone differently. So I try to do these things. Number one, I name what is unresolved. So being able to come out and say, I feel like there's still something hanging between us. There's still, we haven't come to a conclusion here. What am I missing? Don't purport to be the expert and don't diagnose, because those types of things, if there is any animosity or there's, gas in the air that could cause that, you want to make sure you're creating an environment that's fertile for collaboration and connectedness. And so asking what you're missing, asking for the other person's perspective, that gives the other person the opportunity to clarify rather than forcing me to invent their intent, because trust me, I'm often wrong. Second, playing back. You said this earlier, playing back what we've agreed on to this point, and also clarifying like what our priorities are. Like, hey, I understand, Joe. I understand, Mary. Your goal this quarter, this year is this. This is my goal. These are where I see some overlaps. How do you think we should move forward? Don't purport to be the professional here that knows everything. Listen deeply so that you can understand where they're coming from and you can try to find some common ground. Third, separate what's yours and from what's mine and what is not. There's a lot of things that I can do. I can follow up. I can apologize. I can ask another question. I can change my behavior, but I can't force somebody to respond and make a call right now or to understand where I'm coming from or give me the closure that I think I deserve. And then lastly, when I've done what is within my remit, I've got to release the rest. And frankly, that's the hardest part, right? Because I'm wired to keep pushing until something moves or happens. But maturity and discipline are recognizing that persistence is not the same as control. We can only do so much. Sometimes what's left hanging becomes an invitation to another conversation, and we have to accept and embrace that.
That last one, E, letting it go, surrendering. I'm thinking about some trees. That seems weird to say. I'm going to plant some trees by this cabin. And I just asked Copilot, yes, I did ask Copilot Carson, when to plant trees around Williams. And it's actually only in May and June because of seasonality, right? Well, I have this idea that I want to plant them now or in the fall, but that's not the time. And so same in listening and getting to closure or clarity. It has a seasonality to it. It has a natural flow to it. And if I think I'm going to push it, it's going to not get to the level where I need it to be. I've noticed this with this client that I just talked about, where there was some tension. And at some point, I think she felt safe enough to talk to me about what was going on for her. And man, did I have some judgments about that. Like, I think you should not have that. You should not have, should assumptions. And I reminded myself, the world does not work the way Hilke thinks it should work. The world does not work the way Hilke thinks it should work. That's a very tough one for me because I think with all the meditation and introspection and books and workshops, blah, 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 I don't know. And yet, that doesn't mean I become apathetic. It means that I need to engage with deep humility. And humility comes from the word ground, which means, humus, which means ground, basically staying with you here. And it was interesting just listening. And I remember my mind going as he was talking, oh, this issue, I don't know what to do with that. And then this one, ooh, that's going to be hairy. And what I did, as I listened to her, I also listened to my deeper knowing. And basically, I asked myself, I said, okay, what is the service here? And the little silent voice in me said, just listen. Trust it. Just trust it. Such unwelcome advice. And I did. I felt pretty unresolved, unsettled, and anxious after. Part of me felt quiet, but the part of me that has insecurity, that needs the signature or whatever. But the little voice, you just relax. And I noticed the same thing with me and the trees that in fall or in May or June. Just relax. And then the conversations after, I noticed we had flow and these things. Some of the things had gone away. Some of the things had emerged into deeper issues that we could work with. And some things still need to be there. But the sense I got from deep listening, what that yielded was, we're traveling together. I'm here for the long run. So, yeah. So what I do these days in hard conversations, especially once people that are very close to me, I will say, oh yeah, I know that I'm not sure that I will know how to respond or how to handle. I do really want to hear what you're saying, like that. Carson, in our final minutes, if you have a team member in mind who's like, I cannot listen to this person, they're full of manure, what would you say to them?
If somebody said that to me and I'm coaching this person,
Yes.
So two people that don't think they can work together. I think the key element, Hilka, is understanding the different folks' vantage point, because we've talked about this on prior episodes. Just because we think we may have drastically different vantage points and viewpoints of other people doesn't mean that that's true. There are a lot of times where we are very much after common things. I mean, in fact, our own political parties were originally founded on equality and making sure that everybody had what they wanted and needed, right? These are fundamentally good things, but they go askew when they get mixed up with different messages and different social media memes, unfortunately. And so the reality is, just because two people may feel differently about a topic, it doesn't mean that they're so far apart. We have to get grounded in what matters to other people. And so understanding, in fact, I've done the exact same thing when I've had fundamental differences in objectives with different teammates and colleagues. You've got to spend time understanding what matters to the other person if you want to matter to them. And so how do we come together? Where do we find that common ground? How do we figure out what are we going to do when something conflicts? What's going to be the default? And we have to lean into having a conversation. I think, unfortunately, in this day of digital and, working remotely, and, we've gotten away from sitting down and sitting across the table or picking up the phone and having a conversation when we sense some resistance or strain. We've got to actually sit down and sit in the discomfort with those folks, because frankly, that's where the listening and the connection is earned, is when you've sat in that angst and that pain and that anxiety with someone, and you've just heard them out and listened and understood what matters to this person. This is what I'm getting from that tone or that message in my inbox. This is what I'm getting, but what did you intend here? Or, just asking, what are you trying to achieve with this message? I just wanted to seek clarity so that I'm able to deliver in the right way, or we're able to go forward together. You've got to make sure that you're very careful with how you word things, because people get, myself included, defensive and reactionary when they sense that there's a tone or there's a intent that I feel is implied, but the other person may not even know what you're thinking or doing and what your reality is. We've got to make sure that we put the cards on the table, and that we invest in relationships in that regard. And that's what I tell people today when there's any type of resistance or strain. We've got to have a conversation. We've got to come together. We've got to understand, what is the other person trying to achieve, and how can we collectively achieve that together?
To stay curious, really get into it. Also, I love this practice of, when you sense something's going on, create a listening space. So listening is active. I'm going to pick up the phone. Hey, I heard something. I want to check with you. How are you? What's going on with you? Last thing I want to say about this. Listening, I always remind myself that every single person of this 8 billion people that are here is a work in progress. Everybody wants to be happy, and nobody's got it figured out. So all of our thoughts and feelings are all like finger pointing in the universe. Nobody's got the answer. We can just be here together to help each other on our journeys of creating just maybe a moment of clarity, a moment of recognition, a moment of grounding together. Carson, final words to you.
the Beatles had it figured out. All you need is love. And the only way to get to love is respect and being curious about the person that you want to have a connection with.
Thank you. And then let it be. Thank you so much. We've been listening to the Connected Teamwork podcast. We're here with Carson Heddy, my co-host, myself, Wilco Faber. See you next time at the Connected Teamwork podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Teamwork podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Take a moment to reflect on what you learned today that can help build your team. Also, if you like, think about one of your team members and what you appreciate about them. Let them know. Enjoy connecting more deeply to what is great about them. And see you next time at the Connected Teamwork podcast.